I always believed that the morning of my wedding would feel like sunlight breaking through a quiet chapel, warm and hopeful, the kind of peace only little girls in lace dresses dream about. Instead, it felt like standing inside a glass museum case, spotless and staged, where breathing too loudly might crack the illusion my family spent decades curating. The bridal suite glowed, gold chandeliers sending honey light across ivory silk and polished marble, and the soft hum of a string quartet drifted in from the garden below. My wedding gown hugged me like a gentle whisper lace, as delicate as frost, and yet my chest felt tight, as if beauty meant nothing when peace was only borrowed. I sat at the vanity trying to slow my breathing when the door opened without a knock. My mother, Margaret Carter, walked in, first posture, regal face composed like an oil portrait. Her pearls glimmered cold against the pale blue silk of her dress. Behind her came my brother, Bradley Carter Jr., shoulders squared, confidence carved into every line of his body. He held a white envelope with gold trim, and even before he set it down, I felt the weight of it like a stone, dropped in still water. My mother placed a cool hand on my shoulder, her reflection perfectly poised behind mine. "Elle," she murmured, "we have something important to present, a family blessing, $3 million as a legacy grant, to secure your future and honor our name." Bradley laid the envelope in front of me as though it were some sacred offering at an altar. Then came the condition spoken in that soft, polished Southern tone that always sounded gracious even when it cut. "All you need to do is sign into the Carter Family Trust. Bradley will manage shared future assets. It is tradition. It is proper. It is how families like ours preserve legacy." Legacy in our world meant obedience, silence, and sacrifice dressed as duty. My pulse thudded, but my voice stayed steady as I met her eyes in the mirror. "I appreciate the gift truly, but I am marrying Daniel, not surrendering my independence. I am building a marriage, not a leash." My mother's manicured fingers paused mid-air, smoothing a stray veil thread like she could iron out my disobedience. Her voice lowered perfectly calm, like frost spreading across glass. "Elle, do not embarrass our name over emotions." A flicker of heat rose behind my ribs. I blinked, feeling the bridal suite around me like a stage set. The photographer adjusting equipment outside the window, the small security camera blinking quietly in the corner, the way the world watched me, even here. Bradley's jaw clenched, a muscle twitching beneath his perfect grooming. "You owe us," he hissed, voice fraying at the edges. "After everything we invested in you, you do not get to walk away like you were never one of us." I stood smoothing my gown pulse, steadying not from fear, but clarity. I am not walking away. I am choosing my own life. For a single suspended heartbeat, the world held still. Then Bradley's hand shot forward. He grabbed the ceremonial cake knife resting beside the champagne bucket metal, catching the warm light, and in one violent, chillingly silent motion, he drove it into my side. The shock was cold first, then burning a bloom of pain spreading under silk. My breath vanished. I did not scream. The lace of my gown whispered as I collapsed, ivory turning crimson in slow, horrifying petals. Outside the door, bridesmaids' laughter floated like ghosts unaware. My mother moved to block the exit voice, steady as ever, as though this horror were merely a wrinkle in a tablecloth. "Stay quiet. Guests must not know." Pain pulsed hot and dizzying, but my hand found my bouquet. Fingers trembling only slightly as I pressed the tiny emergency pin Daniel insisted I wear. One click. One rebellion. Footsteps thundered down the hallway. A bridesmaid gasped. And then Daniel burst in eyes wide in terror and rage as he saw me bleeding across white lace. He knelt, gathering me into his arms, voice shaking. "I have you, Elle. Stay with me. You are safe." Security rushed in, radio's crackling camera blinking overhead like fate itself bore witness. As the world dimmed, I did not fade from fear. I held on out of fury. They would not bury me in silence. Not anymore. Not ever. I was not born into a home. I was born into a dynasty, one built not on love, but on image whispers and rigid Southern manners polished like the antique silver in our dining room. From the outside, the Carter family of Richmond, Virginia looked like a portrait in a museum, all symmetry and grace. Marble foyer, fresh magnolias. Father in monogrammed shirts, mother in pearls, a certain hush in the hallways that made you speak softly, politely, as though even your voice needed permission. And then there was Bradley. Golden boy, golden smile, golden future, Carter heir. The crown jewel polished before he could even walk. He grew up believing the world would bend for him, and more tragically believing it should. I, on the other hand, learned early how to fold myself into corners of rooms, how to cross my ankles, lower my voice, and exist in quiet ways that made adults nod approvingly. Ladies do not interrupt. Ladies do not raise their voice. Ladies do not outshine their brothers. My mother repeated those lines not as suggestions but commandments. We were Southern, she said, which really meant we were watched. Expectations were corsets. You learned to breathe inside them, or you learned to suffocate without complaint. When I was 7, I won a science fair ribbon, a tiny thing, blue and crinkled. I remember running into the library where my mother stood, whispering excitedly, holding the ribbon with both hands like treasure. Her first reaction was not pride, but irritation as she scanned the room for Bradley, who was loudly bragging about hitting a baseball in gym class. Be happy for your brother L. Do not make today about you. I folded the ribbon and slid it into my pocket. It stayed there warm against my palm, a small secret victory I was allowed to keep only if I kept it silent. My father was gentle, reserved, tired in ways I did not understand until many years later. He would pull me onto his lap and read me books about stars and oceans. He would whisper that quiet strength is still strength. But quietness in our home did not feel like strength. It felt like being erased politely. When he died, it was as though someone took a match to the last soft corner of the house. Mother remarried quickly to a man named Harper, whose smile never reached his eyes. He did not raise his voice, but his silence could strike like a belt. He spoke rarely, but when he did, it was about reputation status, investment portfolios, country club behavior, and how strong families build legacies together. I learned legacy was code for control. Bradley flourished in this new regime. Expensive schools leadership camps, golf lessons, celebratory dinners for even his smallest accomplishments. He crashed a car at 18 and was comforted. I spilled juice at the same age and was told grace is the only thing separating a lady from disgrace. When Bradley squandered investment money at 21 on a cryptocurrency whim, Mother called it a learning curve. When I earned academic scholarships, Mother called them convenient. My success was only praised when it reflected well on Bradley. If he shined, we all glowed. If I shined, I was reminded not to blind him. I can still hear my mother's voice the first time I came home beaming after being accepted into a competitive medical research program. She rested a hand on my arm, smile soft but strange. Darling, your success humiliates your brother if you flaunt it. Everything in me stilled. I had not flaunted anything. I had simply existed in a moment of pride. But in our family, pride was rationed. Bradley always received the larger portion. I learned to shrink celebrations to whispers and disappointments to silence. I learned that family unity meant Bradley's comfort above my life, my dreams, my air. He partied lost jobs, was bailed out quietly. I achieved, but only discreetly, so I would not disturb the golden pedestal on which he stood. Friends outside thought I was lucky to be part of such a refined family. They saw curated holiday cards, polished heirloom ornaments, charity galas with perfect lighting. They never saw the tension beneath the crystal chandeliers, the resentment sharpened by expectations, the way my mother's eyes hardened when she thought Bradley deserved more from the world and I deserved less. When Daniel came into my life warm and grounded, the first man who valued my voice instead of my compliance, my family did not welcome him. They assessed him, weighed him like produce at a market. Brooke's family is respectable but modest, Mother murmured once. Good people, but not our people. It struck me then how our family treated goodness as a charming accessory, not a core virtue. The more love Daniel showed me, the more Bradley resented me. He saw Daniel supporting me as rebellion. He saw my independence as betrayal. I see it now so clearly. The wedding was never just a celebration for them. It was a final attempt to pull me back into their orbit to tether my future to Bradley's throne. And when I refused to kneel, he did not hesitate to remind me that golden boys are not used to anyone choosing freedom over them. The first time the world glimpsed the truth behind the Carter family elegance was not at my wedding, but months before at our engagement dinner. The venue was one of those historic Richmond estates, all brick columns, wrought iron balconies, and magnolia blossoms floating in warm evening air. Guests arrived in pearls and pressed collars, the kind who compliment wine notes and judge silently in the same breath. I remember smoothing the front of my pale silver dress as Daniel held the door for me, his hand warm against my back, grounding me. His family arrived shortly after Brooks' family energy, bright and earnest, the kind of genuine you do not have to squint to see. His mother, Margaret Brooks, brought sunflowers in a mason jar, her laugh spilling warm like syrup. His father shook hands firmly with servers, asking for names, making small jokes about never out-drinking Southerners, and every word felt like sunlight. They stood in stark contrast to the Carter presence. My mother wore diamonds heavy enough to hum under the lights, her smile still controlled, dangerously pristine. Bradley leaned against the bar, already 2 bourbons in shirt collar, sharp laughter sharpest. He lifted his glass as we walked in. Finally, the prodigal daughter returns to the flock. The joke landed soft enough for guests to chuckle, but pointed enough for my stomach to knot. Daniel squeezed my hand. "Ignore it," his thumb murmured against my skin. I tried. When we moved to the dining room place, cards glittered on crystal plates. The seating chart was a battlefield disguised as sophistication. Mother positioned Daniel and his parents at the far side of the table. Brooks' family smiled anyway, content simply to be included, but I saw it. That tiny wince, that slight tightening around Daniel's jaw. Class does not always show through clothes. Sometimes it shows through who you try to diminish. Dinner began with a toast. Mother stood glass raised. To Eleanor and Daniel. May this union strengthen both our families and preserve the values we hold dear. Preserve. It sat like ice in the room. Brooks' family clapped warmly, but I felt a weight pressing on my chest. Then Bradley stood smirk spreading like oil. "I want to say, little sis, we are so proud you found someone who does not mind your bookworm ways." Laughter rippled from Carter friends, genteel amused. A family friend leaned over and whispered too loudly, "Daniel must be very patient." Brooks' family eyes darted shocked. Daniel set his fork down, silent fury settling in his posture. I swallowed humiliation like a bitter pill. He leaned close, whispering, "You do not owe them your life." The words steadied me like a hand at my spine. Conversation drifted into wealth-coded language. Real estate, legacy portfolios, foundation lineage. Mother turned to Mrs. Brooks with a gentle, sharpened smile. "And what line is your family from?" Mrs. Brooks blinked, confused. "We are from people who work." Mother smiled wider, but I saw the flicker of disdain she thought she hid so well. A server poured wine, and Bradley tapped his glass. "Actually, I want to make one more toast." He lifted his bourbon. "To family loyalty. Because no matter who you marry, blood is thicker than vows." My throat closed. The table murmured approval like a hymn. Daniel stared steadily at him. "I disagree," he said, voice low but sure. "Loyalty is earned." Bradley's smile dropped for a second, something mean flickering behind his eyes. Mother laughed lightly, trying to smooth tension. "Oh, Daniel, Eleanor has always been sensitive." That word again. A cage. A muzzle. I felt heat rising behind my eyes. Daniel turned to the table. "I think sensitivity is just honesty without armor." The room fell quiet. Brooks' father nodded slow, proud. Bradley rolled his eyes. "Must be nice living in fairy tales." Real families build legacies, not feelings. I spoke softly but steady. "Love is a legacy." Mother's fork paused mid-air. Her lips parted just a fraction. That was my first rebellion in public. And though my voice did not shake, I felt the world tilt. Bradley leaned in smile, cold as marble. "We will see how long you keep that fairy tale." Daniel reached for my hand under the table. "You do not need to be theirs to be someone." The words buried themselves somewhere deep, like seeds waiting for fire to bloom. Dessert came. Champagne flowed. Carter guests resumed their diplomatic laughter, but lines had been drawn silent and sharp. When we said goodbye, Mrs. Brooks hugged me warm, whispering, "Families come in many forms, sweetheart. You will build your own." My chest tightened a mixture of gratitude and grief. Mother kissed my cheek with air cold enough to sting. "Do not forget where you come from," she murmured. I walked away, thinking she had no idea that I was trying desperately not to become what I came from. In the car, Daniel held my hand, silence thick but not empty. He finally spoke. "They do not see you." I nodded, staring out the window at Richmond lights blurring into streaks like tears I refused to shed. Then he added quietly, "But I do." That night I lay awake long after Daniel fell asleep, staring at the ceiling, hearing Bradley's words echo. Blood is thicker than vows. Back then, I thought it was a threat. Now I know it was a warning, and warnings only matter if you believe the storm will pass without hitting you. I did not realize yet that mine was already forming, and that the people I shared a last name with were the ones calling in the lightning. The weeks leading up to the wedding felt like walking through a house soaked in gasoline. At first glance, everything looked elegant, polished under control. But the smallest spark could have turned the entire Carter empire into ash, and somehow they all sensed it was coming. Not from Bradley, not from Mother, from me. When the invitations went out and RSVPs returned with enthusiastic notes from judges, philanthropists, and society wives, Mother smiled like a queen surveying her domain. Yet she watched me, always watched as if afraid a single breath out of place might topple her perfect tableau. Bradley checked less often during those weeks, drifting through rooms smelling like fine whiskey and arrogance, but his presence lingered like the echo of a slammed door. He paced the hallways with restless fury masked under celebratory charm. There is a special kind of tension in wealthy families when they fear losing control. It does not scream. It tightens. It polishes. It whispers. The first pressure arrived in the form of a lunch invitation at the Jefferson Hotel. I sat across from Mother beneath crystal chandeliers, the sound of silverware tapping porcelain like tiny clocks counting down. She smiled as if posing for a society magazine, then placed a sleek binder in front of me titled Carter Family Trust Legacy Alignment. I felt Daniel's warmth in my mind, his voice echoing, "You do not owe them your life." Mother tapped the binder gently. "We simply want to protect what generations before us worked for." I raised a brow. "By having me sign over half my future assets and business holdings." She leaned forward, smile tightening. "Marriage is about sacrifice. Legacy is about discipline. Love," she added, pausing for effect, "does not pay for private schools or historic acreage." I stared at her polished nails, remembering every time she told me to keep my voice soft and my presence softer. "Why does Bradley not sign anything like this?" I asked. Her eyes glinted with something sharp. "Because Bradley is the family's future. You are its reflection." I sat there, breath lodged in my throat like a cherry pit. Reflection, decoration, reinforcement, but never foundation, never owner. A week later, Bradley sent me a voice message at 2 a.m. His tone sounded casual, but beneath it quivered something darker. "Elle, I know you are not going to do anything stupid. You would not want to make things hard for yourself, or for Daniel." I played it twice, then recorded it quietly, staring at my phone while the room hummed with the sound of my pulse. I started saving everything, texts that complimented me, but always ended with a warning. "Daniel is good for you, but remember who made you." Voicemails layered with condescension disguised as concern. "Just keep things smooth, Elle. We need unity here." "You are not thinking clearly." They said the way abusers say someone else is emotional, as if the accusation alone invalidated any truth I held. The first blow did not come in physical form, but in silence. A learned weapon in my family. Bradley ignored me at a pre-wedding brunch, choosing instead to loudly discuss his investment plans with a banker who nodded too eagerly. Mother pulled me aside after grip firm on my wrist. "Do not sulk. It makes women forgettable." I looked at her hand and for the first time did not shrink. I pulled away slowly. I am not sulking. I am thinking. Her jaw tightened and she whispered, "Do not make this difficult." Difficult. The word women like her reserved for daughters who dared to breathe differently. Daniel noticed the change before anyone else. Late one night, sitting on our couch, surrounded by half-assembled wedding gift bags, he studied me with soft concern. "You are bracing for something," he said. "Tell me what it is." I hesitated, the old instinct rising, the one trained to protect the family even when the family did not protect me. But I had already chosen a different life, a different loyalty. "They want me to sign a trust," I said quietly. "It gives Brad control over my assets." He stared at me for a long moment, shock flickering to disbelief. "That is not legacy, Elle. That is ownership." I nodded. "I know. And I am not signing." His shoulders relaxed, then squared jaw set with calm fierceness. "Whatever storm comes from that, I am here." I leaned into him, breathing in safety like oxygen. The storm came faster than either of us expected. Calls from Mother. Messages dripping with sugar at first, then vinegar. "Darling, just think about your future. You are being emotional." Finally, "If you do not sign, do not expect us to support you again." I read that line 3 times, pulse even. Funny, I thought they never supported me. They just called my absence disloyalty. That night, Brad sent a final message. "I am warning you. Do not force me to fix this the hard way. I saved it." I stared at the ceiling, the shadows shifting like old ghosts. I felt the fear, yes. But beneath it, a heat, a spark, a choice forming. I whispered into the dark, "I am done being quiet." And my voice did not tremble. It rang like steel. Morning light poured through the sheer curtains like liquid gold, and for a moment, I let myself pretend this day belonged to me, not to legacy or image or silent expectations sharpened into weapons. Just me. I woke before the stylists arrived, sitting alone at the vanity in the bridal suite. Hair undone, robe soft around me like a shield. Outside the estate grounds buzzed with quiet preparation, florists clipping stems, musicians tuning strings, caterers speaking in hushed orchestral rhythms. It should have felt magical, but magic does not arrive in homes where control has long replaced love. When hair and makeup began, cameras hovered subtly in corners of the suite, capturing delicate touches. Glossy lip moments, the illusion of a bride at peace. Mother glided in as the stylist pinned pearl combs into my hair, her presence slicing the air like the crisp edge of a blade. She kissed my cheek without warmth. "Today is a great responsibility, Elle," she murmured, smoothing the sheer sleeve of my gown. "Not a celebration. A responsibility." That should have been my first warning. But I smiled politely, the way I had been trained. Bridesmaids fluttered around me complimenting curls and lace, and the heirloom diamond drop earrings Mother insisted I borrow, as if wearing Carter jewels meant inheriting Carter loyalty. Daniel's mother peeked in with a tray of breakfast, eyes soft and excited. She touched my hand gently. "Honey, eat. You will get lightheaded." I almost cried then because concern like that was still new to me. Love given freely felt foreign after a lifetime of love exchanged like currency. As the string quartet rehearsed outside, I slipped away quietly to the private balcony. The winter air bit through silk, but I inhaled deeply, grounding myself in the cold, in the real, in something that was mine. Daniel texted, "Counting seconds until I see you." My pulse steadied. Then another text from Bradley. "We need to talk before ceremony. Family matter." My stomach tightened. I did not respond. But fear crawled familiar down my spine, settling where old obedience used to live. Bridesmaids returned with mimosas. One kissed my cheek. "This is your day, Elle." I wanted to believe her, but I could feel the Carter presence swelling around me. A crown they planned to place on my head, heavy and gilded with chains. Around 10, the Brooks family arrived to say hello before photos. Daniel's father squeezed my shoulder with genuine pride, and Daniel himself, still in his shirt sleeves, slipped through the door just to whisper one word. "Ready." His hand brushed my cheek, and warmth flooded through me. Behind him, like a chilling breeze, Bradley appeared in the doorway. Daniel's hand tensed. Bradley looked me up and down with a smirk. "Beautiful." Shame beauty is not enough to lead a family. Daniel stepped slightly forward, calm but steady, the way good men protect without performing. This is not the time, Brad. Bradley's jaw flexed, but he stepped back, eyes burning into mine like a promise. We will talk. Soon. After Daniel left, Mother appeared again, adjusting a gold cuff on her wrist. I could hear her voice before she spoke. You will not embarrass us today. I met her eyes in the mirror. I am marrying the man I love. That should be enough. Her expression tightened just a fraction. Love does not secure legacy. Discipline does. She placed her hand on my hair like she was blessing me, but it felt like marking territory. Do not ruin this family with impulsive choices, she whispered. I wondered if she heard herself. I wondered if she knew choices only ever felt impulsive to her when they were not hers. Then she glanced up at the security camera in the corner, smile returning like porcelain resetting on her face. The performance resumed, but the crack beneath it widened. When dress and veil were finally secured, I stood lace trailing behind me like frost. One bridesmaid gasped softly. You look like royalty. I did not feel royal. I felt like an actress stepping into the finale of a play I no longer wanted to star in. I carried the bouquet fingers brushing the tiny silver SOS button built into the stem. Daniel had added it last night, just in case he'd whispered, in case of what I had asked. But deep down we both knew. The Carter house never let anyone leave quietly. As we lined up for the first look with the bridal party, Bradley passed by, again, brushing a hand across his suit lapel like a king preparing for a coronation. He paused by me, voice low enough only I could hear. Last chance, little sister. Obey, and today stays perfect. I raised my chin, heartbeat a steady drum. I am not property. His jaw clenched. You will regret that. I walked away before he finished veil rustling like wings. When I reached Daniel in the garden and he turned with that mixture of awe and devotion, the world momentarily softened. For one suspended breath, I believed love could outpace blood. He whispered, You are the most beautiful thing I have ever seen. I leaned into him, letting safety wrap around me. But in the corner of my eye by the French doors, Mother and Bradley watched like judges waiting for a sentence to be read. And I knew then they were planning something. Not loud, not messy. That was not the Carter way, but deliberate, controlled. Punishment disguised as responsibility. I smiled for photos, held Daniel's hand, let laughter float like champagne bubbles. Yet inside, I braced, because softness was not weakness. It was preparation. And while they believed they still owned the script, I had already decided to rewrite the ending. The lace on my sleeves shimmered in the winter light. Cracks beneath porcelain always shine before they break. There is a moment in every woman's life when she realizes silence was never safety, only obedience dressed as grace. Mine came under ivory lace and soft candlelight right before steel-kissed skin. The bridal suite glowed as if heaven itself had been hired as lighting crew. Aromas of peonies and champagne floated in the air. Delicate music drifted from the garden guests, laughed in polished southern rhythms, and for a fleeting second I believed ceremony and love could drown out legacy and control. The photographer finished bridal portraits, the veil brushed my shoulders like a blessing, and my heart beat in a steady hymn. I was ready to walk toward a future shaped by love instead of lineage. Then the door closed. I heard the soft latch click like a trigger pulled. Mother entered first, perfect posture, perfect pearls, perfect storm brewing behind calm eyes. Bradley followed jaw tight, fingers twitching like a man trying to restrain his own temper, but finding fury far more satisfying. He closed the space between us, slowly, voice dripping with charm that never reached his eyes. You remember our talk? This is your last chance. My pulse thudded, but my voice remained calm. I told you already, I am not signing away my life. A tense breath passed. Mother's smile sharpened, practiced elegance masking something colder. Legacy requires commitment, Elle. Do not make a spectacle. And even then, even in that fragile moment, she thought reputation mattered more than blood. I lifted my chin, lace trembling as I inhaled. I choose love. My life is mine. Bradley's nostrils flared. The muscle along his jaw jumped like it was trying to break free. He reached toward the envelope resting on the vanity, holding it like scripture betrayed. "Do you know what you owe this family?" he hissed. "Everything!" I did not raise my voice. I did not tremble. I simply said softly, "I owe you nothing you did not manufacture for appearances." It was the first time in my life I tore the leash clean. It was also the last moment before chaos began. In a movement that looked rehearsed by rage, Bradley's hand shot toward the silver cake knife sitting innocently beside the champagne. I saw the flash of metal, the glitter of chandelier light reflecting off polished steel, and then his arm drove forward. Pain bloomed, sudden and white-hot, a shocking burst beneath silk. My breath stopped. Not a scream. Not a gasp. Just stillness. My hand flew to my side, fingers pressing lace, now warming with blood. Bradley's face twisted panic mixing with hatred like he had expected power to obey him and was stunned that consequence answered instead. My knees buckled. The world tilted. I sank to the floor slowly, my veil fanning like wings, collapsing the ivory fabric spreading beneath me like snow touched by sunrise. Mother moved as smoothly as if she were adjusting a floral arrangement instead of guarding a crime scene. She stepped between me and the door, palm resting lightly against it. Her voice was soft enough to shatter me more than screaming ever could. "Stay quiet. Guests must not know." Maybe if she had cried, maybe if she had panicked, maybe if she had shown one flicker of maternal instinct, I could have forgiven the years I mistook control for love. But she chose silence as salvation, silence as loyalty, silence as poison. I tasted metallic fear in my mouth, but I would not be buried quietly again. My fingers brushed the bouquet, found the tiny silver button Daniel insisted I keep, and pressed. One soft click. A sound no one noticed, but destiny did. Mother bent toward me, smoothing my veil, as though tidying a display. Pain is temporary. Reputation is forever. My vision blurred. My heartbeat surged like thunder underwater. Somewhere beyond the door, laughter died abruptly, replaced by hurried footsteps. A bridesmaid's voice pierced the air. "Something is wrong. Where is Elle?" The door flew open before Mother could brace it. Bridesmaids gasped. Hands flew to mouths. One screamed. Another whispered, "Oh my God," like prayer and horror braided together. Then Daniel, my anchor, my oxygen, my proof that love did not always wound. He burst through the doorway, chest heaving, eyes locking onto me on the floor. His face drained of color, then flushed with fury so pure it vibrated in the room. He dropped to his knees, pulling me into his arms, voice breaking like glass. "Elle, stay with me. I am right here." His hand pressed my wound gently, trying to stop blood from blooming through lace. Breath, shaking posture, shaking love, shaking. Bradley stumbled back, pale now, panic replacing arrogance. "It was an accident." She grabbed the knife. Daniel lifted his head slowly, deathly calm, like a man deciding between mercy and vengeance. "If you ever touch her again, you will not walk away." Daniel's voice did not shout. It cut. Security rushed in, radios crackling, camera light blinking like truth, recording every second. A guard barked, "Call emergency medical now." Mother tried to speak, but Daniel's mother entered, eyes wide with devastation as she saw me and the moral divide between families split the air open. Everything inside me wanted to close my eyes, to slip under, to float away from pain. But I remembered childhood whispers telling me good girls stay silent, and I refused. Not again. Not now. I clung to Daniel's collar voice, barely breath but firm. No more protecting them. Daniel kissed my forehead, tears burning against my skin. "I have you. Breathe. Breathe, Elle." Sirens wailed faintly in the distance, growing louder like justice finally coming for a house that had walled it out for decades. Guests whispered in hallways, Southern charm cracking under scandal. Bradley stood frozen, as if the world betrayed him by not rearranging itself around his rage. and Mother still attempted composure like she could iron reality flat. Do not make a scene. Daniel turned on her. She almost died. And all you care about is the scene. Her lip quivered, but only from humiliation, not humanity. My vision tunneled, the world dimmed, but my resolve sharpened steel forged in fire. I whispered, barely audible, yet louder than every Carter rule I ever obeyed. I choose to live, not for them, for me. Darkness swept in soft, but sure. I let my eyes close, not in surrender, but in promise. When I woke, the war would begin. And this time, I would not fight quietly. I would not bleed politely. I would rise. Waking up felt like surfacing through thick, freezing water, every heartbeat echoing like a distant drum, every breath scraping through my chest as if pain had sharpened the air into knives. The world came back in pieces, the antiseptic tang of the hospital fluorescent lights glowing too white, the steady beeping of machines, and then the soft warmth of a hand wrapped around mine. Daniel. His thumb moved in slow circles across my knuckles, grounding me. His face was pale eyes rimmed red, not from anger now, but from fear and sleeplessness. When he noticed my eyelids flutter, relief broke across his expression, like dawn after a storm. Elle, he whispered, voice thick with emotion. You are here. You are here. I tried to speak, but the dryness in my throat turned the first attempt into a rasp. He brought water, carefully supporting my head like it might break. Everything hurt, but there was something else beneath the pain. A pulse of something fierce, something rising like molten steel instead of tears. No more silence. A nurse entered, gentle hands adjusting monitors, checking oxygen tubing. She smiled, kind and warm, in the way people who have seen too much suffering learn to cradle it softly. You are safe. You lost blood, but we stabilized you. You are lucky. I did not feel lucky. I felt awakened. When the nurse stepped out, Daniel leaned closer, voice low and shaking. The police are here. They want to speak with you when you are ready. His fingers tightened around mine. Your family tried to spin this as an accident, a cake knife mishap. My breath shook. It might have broken me once hearing the same pattern deny, distort, dismiss. But not now. Not after seeing my blood-stained lace and marble while my mother whispered silence like prayer. I steadied my voice, even though it trembled on the first note. It was not an accident. Daniel nodded, jaw set, with the kind of fury that is quieter than shouting, but far more dangerous. I know, and they will not get away with this. A soft knock. A police detective entered, notepad in hand, demeanor calm, but grave. I recognized the look. It was the face of someone who had seen families burn their own in the name of pride. Mrs. Brooks slipped in behind him, eyes shining with tears, holding Daniel's shoulder with maternal strength. You are our daughter now, she whispered before stepping aside. That sentence warmed me more than any blanket could. The detective sat gently. Miss Carter. Or Mrs. Brooks. I took a breath. Soon, Mrs. Brooks. But today, Elle is fine. He nodded. Can you tell me what happened? There was no trembling fear now, only clarity sharpened by betrayal. My voice was steady, almost shockingly calm. My brother stabbed me. My mother told me to stay quiet so the guests would not know. Daniel's grip tightened. The detective's pen paused mid-stroke. Did they threaten you before I looked at Daniel, then back? Yes. Weeks of pressure to sign my life into a trust controlled by my brother. Voicemails, messages. I recorded them. They wanted ownership disguised as legacy. The detective nodded slowly. We already pulled venue security footage. It supports your statement. Relief loosened my chest, but did not soften my resolve. Good, because they will lie. They always lie. The nurse returned to adjust the IV. Daniel kissed my forehead. Mrs. Brooks brushed my hair gently back, mothering me in a way I had never felt from my own mother. The detective stood. We will move forward. Charges are being prepared. The second he left, the door cracked open again. My mother entered. Perfect hair, perfect posture, perfect detachment, as though she had rehearsed grief but decided it was unflattering. Darling, she breathed as if she had rushed across continents instead of across her kingdom of denial. It was all a misunderstanding. You frightened us. I stared at her, letting silence sit heavy, letting her feel for once the weight of words unsaid. Daniel moved to block her voice ice. Do not come near her. She blinked, genuinely startled. Someone dared deny her access. I spoke, voice even and cold. He stabbed me. You told me not to make a scene. Her face flickered. Just a second. A fracture in porcelain. Then the practiced coldness returned. Families protect each other. I met her gaze with a steadiness I had never allowed myself before. Families do not stab daughters and call it duty. They do not silence them and call it grace. Her lips thinned. You are confused. Trauma distorts perception. It was the same line abusers have used for centuries. Rewrite reality. Make the survivor doubt their own eyes. But this time she miscalculated. The nurse entered again, and Mother dropped her hand from the rail as if the sight of a witness offended her. Daniel crossed his arms. Leave before you humiliate yourself further. Mother's jaw clenched. You will regret turning against us. I inhaled deeply. No. I regret staying loyal to people who mistook control for love. She left without answering, perfume trailing like cold smoke. The door shut. The room exhaled with me. Later, Evelyn Ward arrived. Sharp mind, soft eyes, a lawyer who did not weaponize truth but protected it. She sat where my mother had stood and held my hand with sincerity instead of entitlement. I am here because your husband called me and said, she is done being quiet. Is that true? It was. Every cell in my body knew it. Yes, I am done. She opened a folder. We will secure medical records, witness statements, security footage, digital messages. We will not let them frame this as accident or hysteria. They will learn legacy does not outrank law. I swallowed, voice suddenly small again but not weak. They will hate me. Evelyn squeezed my hand. Darling, they already did. They hated you the moment you stopped being their silent trophy. You are not betraying a family. You are escaping a system. Those words cracked something open in me. Not wound, recognition. The IV beeped, machines hummed, and inside my chest, fury turned into purpose. Hours passed. Nurses checked vitals. Daniel never let go of my hand, even when he slept sitting upright beside me, exhaustion softening his features. In the quiet hours before sunrise, hospital halls dim and still. I stared at the ceiling, breathing slow, feeling stitches pull gently with each inhale. I whispered to myself, almost prayer, almost war cry. No more silence. The truth felt powerful in my mouth, like a blade, like a shield, like something earned, not granted. When dawn finally came pale gold spilling across sterile sheets, I closed my eyes and pictured lace-stained red, my mother's frozen expression, Bradley's shock when power failed him, Daniel's hands trembling with love and fury. I pictured the moment I rose from this bed, and I felt it deep, unshakable, sacred. I would not return to the Carter legacy. I would burn it clean from my life, not out of vengeance alone, though that fire lived too, but because peace is not given, it is built, and I would build mine louder than silence ever allowed me to speak. Justice does not arrive politely in a box tied with ribbon. It crawls, claws, demands breath, and rises only when someone is determined enough to drag it into daylight. In the days following the stabbing, my hospital room transformed from a place of healing into a quiet command center, monitors beeping like ticking clocks, the sterile smell mixing with sharpened resolve. Every shift nurse, every soft footstep, every hum of fluorescent light became part of the rhythm of rebuilding my life from blood and betrayal. Daniel slept on the small couch beside me, a blanket thrown over him, exhaustion hanging from his shoulders like armor dented but not broken. Every time I stirred, his eyes snapped open as if he feared I might vanish into the same silence my family once forced on me. I did not vanish. I sharpened. Evelyn arrived each morning with coffee and folders thick as history books. She carried the calm steadiness of someone who had seen empires try to crush the wrong woman and learned how to break them politely, legally, and thoroughly. She sat at my bedside with her notebook open, pen poised. "We will begin by securing evidence properly," she said. "Not vengeance, protection." And so began the quiet war. First came the digital trail. I handed her my phone screen, still cracked from the wedding suite floor. I saved Bradley's voicemails, the thinly veiled threats dripping through the speakers. "Do not force me to fix this the hard way." I replayed it once more, not out of doubt, but to carve the memory into steel. Evelyn nodded. "Keep it. We will subpoena his phone records, too." For once, arrogance did my work for me. The more entitled a man believes he is, the more carelessly he leaves footprints in the snow. Then came the text messages from Mother Veiled, pressure packaged as maternal guidance. "Darling, do not be emotional." A signature line of hers, a phrase designed to erase my reality, not soothe it. Evelyn raised an eyebrow. "Gaslighting in print form." "Useful." Next venue footage. Security guards had witnessed the aftermath, and the management had pulled the recordings the moment Daniel demanded them. One clip showed Bradley pacing the hallways earlier that morning, tense, agitated, adjusting his tie with jerking hands. Another showed Mother speaking quietly to a caterer, her smile, fixed eyes sharp as she leaned in and murmured something unheard, but her expression spoke volumes: control, calculation, pride teetering on panic. The most damning clip, though, captured the moment the bridesmaid burst into the suite, and Daniel swept me from the floor, blood soaking his white shirt, my veil dragged behind us like a fallen angel's wings. Mother's face hovered in the background, pale and composed, as though she were attending a charity gala, not watching her daughter bleed. Evelyn pressed pause. "That lack of panic will haunt her in court." I nodded. It haunted me already. Next came medical documentation. Stab wound depth angle, surgeon testimony, detailed photographs showing blood-staining lace and patterns no accident could fake. The attending physician wrote clearly injury consistent with intentional force, not mishandling or fall. Even so, Bradley tried to control the narrative. In the quiet hours of the second night, while machines whispered and Daniel slept lightly, a private investigator hired by my mother attempted to enter my room under the guise of concern. He wore a crisp suit, too polished to be kind. I recognized Carter tactics, instantly influence disguised as sympathy pressure, disguised as family duty. I lifted my hand, stopping him with a voice no longer trained to soften. "Leave." He blinked, stunned. Someone denied Carter authority. Daniel woke at the sound and stood instantly, placing a firm hand on the man's shoulder. "She said leave." The man hesitated, even opened his mouth to speak, but uncomfortable truth now drifted like smoke from my hospital bed. I was no longer theirs to intimidate. Nurses turned watching. Witnesses matter. He backed out. The door clicked shut. Silence returned, but it was not the suffocating kind anymore. It breathed, it stood with me. Friends who were at the wedding began sending voice notes, messages, shaky videos. Bridesmaids texted their horror and outrage, promising to speak up. One wrote, "I never want to see a mother look at her child like that again." Another messaged, "I will testify." "I do not care who they are." As these messages poured in, Evelyn's eyes glinted the glint of strategy aligning perfectly with truth. "Entitlement always thinks cameras love them," she murmured, tapping her pen. "But arrogance never checks for microphones." Meanwhile, my mother sent one final text. "Stop this now and we fix it quietly. Legacy stays intact." That was her war cry. Mine was already spoken in blood. I did not respond. I forwarded it to Evelyn. She smiled grimly. "Perfect." Meanwhile, Bradley remained silent. Not apology, not remorse. Silence like a child caught waiting for someone to fix his mess for him. The world he had been raised in always cleaned up after him, but silence did not save him now. It condemned him. On the morning of day 4, the detective returned with an update. "We have enough to move forward. Charges will be filed. Assault with a deadly weapon. Attempted coercion." I felt lightness then, not joy, but truth settling into place, like bones aligning after being dislocated for years. I imagined my father gentle and kind, the only one who ever told me my quiet could be strength. I imagined him watching this from somewhere mercy still reaches. Maybe he always knew I would break the cycle. Daniel kissed my temple, whispering he was proud. Evelyn closed her notebook. Now she said we prepare for their response. And they did respond. The Carter family hired a crisis PR firm as if reputation could rewrite a knife's intention. They reached out to select media outlets claiming hysteria, exhaustion, misinterpretation. But the story did not catch fire. Whispers circulated instead. Country club murmurs. Business luncheon pauses. Women in pearls exchanging knowing glances. Too much power, too little accountability. The cracks in their ivory tower spread. Back in my hospital room, nurses began calling me the brave bride. Not victim, survivor, fighter. Words matter. Titles matter. And I was done living under theirs. I asked Evelyn one night, voice quiet but sure, "What happens if they come after me harder?" She looked up steady and unflinching. "Then we come back harder. With truth, with law, with witnesses. You are no longer alone in a house that punished you for thinking." I inhaled deeply, letting the oxygen fill not just my lungs, but every wounded part of me that had ever believed I needed their approval to breathe. This was not just evidence collection, it was reclamation. I was gathering not just proof of a crime, but proof of self, proof that my voice had weight value consequence. They sharpened my silence for years, but now my words cut sharper than their expectations ever did. And every piece of evidence, every message, every witness statement was a stone in the foundation of a life rebuilt without Carter obedience binding it. When I closed my eyes that night, I did not see lace stained crimson or Mother's frozen smile. I saw the moment ahead, the confrontation, the truth laid bare, not just for them to see, but for me to stand in. I was not going back to silence. I was building a voice loud enough that even history would hear it. And this time, legacy would not belong to my bloodline. It would belong to me. Silence used to be the cage they put me in. Now it became the weapon I turned against them. Not by hiding, not by shrinking, but by watching recording documenting every attempt they made to rewrite what happened. The hospital released me after a week, Daniel's hand steady in mine as we stepped into crisp Virginia winter air. I wore a soft sweater, ribs still aching, stitches tugging, but my spine felt straighter than it ever had in that sprawling Carter mansion. I was different now. Pain stitched me together where obedience had once held me hostage. At home, our small craftsman house felt like sanctuary, not estate. Daniel carried my bag inside, moving with a gentleness that felt fierce because it came from devotion rather than duty. The Brooks family stocked our fridge, left blankets, flowers, handwritten notes. "Welcome home," it read. "Not you owe us. Not do not embarrass us. Home. Real home." I sat in the living room with tea and a heating pad pressed against my side while snow dusted the window like quiet absolution. Evelyn arrived that afternoon, binder thicker now, her boots tapping hardwood like the steady march of justice approaching. She sat across from me, posture elegant, but relaxed her eyes, scanning mine. "They will try to contact you," she said. "They will try to manipulate the narrative. Let them talk." I frowned. I thought silence was dangerous. Her smile curved like she knew the storm better than it knew itself. "Controlled silence is power. You do not chase them. You do not defend. You simply watch them dig their own grave. Entitlement always confesses if you give it space long enough." She stood to leave, touching my shoulder. "When they call, text, visit, record it, or let them talk where truth has ears." I nodded slowly. This was a new version of me, strategic, calm, no longer bleeding for them, ready to let them bleed themselves. The next morning, the doorbell rang. Daniel opened it. My mother swept in like winter wind, wearing Chanel in false grief. She looked around our modest home with subtle disdain she failed to mask. Her eyes flicked to our wedding photos drying on the table, untainted by blood, but heavy with the shadow of the vows we never got to speak. She sat without being invited. The air went cold. I stood slowly, hand resting on my stitches. "Mother," I said, voice not cold, but controlled. She clasped her hands, diamonds glittering like shackles. "Eleanor, this has gotten out of hand. You need to withdraw your accusations. Families do not survive scandal like this." Ah, yes. Survival, the Carter Creed. Not integrity, not truth. Image. always image. I folded my arms, heat rising beneath my ribs. He stabbed me. She sighed, patient like I was a child misunderstanding a lesson. He lost his temper. It happens. That sentence cut sharper than the knife. It happens. As if attempted murder was a spilled drink at a garden party. As if my blood was simply an unfortunate inconvenience on custom Italian lace. Daniel's jaw flexed. He stood beside me silent, tall, immovable. Mother leaned forward. This is the moment where strong women protect their family future. Do not dramatize this. There it was again, the accusation that truth equals drama, that survival equals silence, that obedience equals dignity. I leaned back, letting her fill the space with entitlement. I did not argue. I let her talk. She mistook quiet for hesitation. Good. Her voice dropped. Stop this, and we make sure Daniel's career stays untouched. We fix your reputation. We keep you in the trust. We bring you home. Home. As if marble and money ever felt like home. As if love could be forged from threats disguised as offers. Daniel spoke before I could. She is not going back. Mother's eyes hardened. This boy is speaking for you. Now. I met her gaze calmly. No. I am speaking for myself. Her nostrils flared. You will regret this rebellion. I smiled. Light. Controlled. I do not regret choosing myself. She stood smoothing her coat. You think you are strong, but the world is not kind to women who destroy their families. I let the words hang, then responded quietly. I did not destroy it. I exposed it. She froze for half a second, mask cracking. I caught it. Proof enough. She left with clipped steps. Daniel exhaled, shakily, shoulders loosening. I pressed the stop button on my phone recorder hidden under the throw pillow. Evelyn would be delighted. For days, the pattern repeated. Texts poured in. Bradley's voice strained, left voicemails, L. Stop. This is all in your head. Then, do not ruin my life over one mistake. And later, more frantic, you owe us. After everything we did for you. The language of entitlement never changes. It simply shifts tone. First command, then shame, then desperation. Mother's friends called. So sorry, dear. You must be confused. You poor thing. Women of their social circle were conditioned to confuse pity with support and silence with strength. They weaponized sympathy the same way they worshipped pearls, quietly, strategically, never for warmth. I responded to none. But I saved everything. Screenshots, voicemails, transcriptions, dates, times, context. We built a fortress with their own words. Daniel played gatekeeper. He brought me tea, made soup-wrapped blankets around me like armor. When fear slipped through cracks in the night, he whispered, "You are not alone." And in the morning, sunlight filtered in like truth, spreading through curtains. One afternoon, the doorbell rang again, but it was not Mother. It was Harper, the stepfather who had always carried power like a concealed weapon. He stood on our porch, posture rigid, coat immaculate. Daniel opened the door enough to block entry. Harper did not look at him. He looked at me. Eleanor, we can settle this quietly. Drop the case. I sipped my tea. And what will you give in exchange? His eyes flashed. Permission. Permission. The word poisoned the air. I set my cup down slowly. I did not ask your permission to live. I will not ask your permission to speak. He inhaled slowly, voice dropping. Do not mistake temporary attention for strength. Society turns quickly. It will shame you for this. I tilted my head, studying him. Or it will shame you for believing daughters are disposable. His jaw tightened. He had expected tears. Rage. Weakness. Instead, he got silence sharp as glass. He stepped back. This is your last chance. I lifted an eyebrow. No. It was yours. The door shut. Daniel slid the deadbolt. I recorded the conversation, even his threats outside the door, as his voice faded down the walkway. They were building their own gallows in real time, stringing rope with every word they thought held power. And every day, every call, every manipulation attempt, I grew stronger, steadier. My pain turned into purpose. My bruises turned into armor, my breath into testimony. Evelyn texted, "They are handing us victory on a platter." I responded, "They always assumed the platter would stay in their hands." That night, as snow fell like forgiveness over rooftops, Daniel held me close and whispered, "How do you feel?" I looked at our modest house, our quiet life, our truth. I feel free, and for the first time in my life, silence felt like power because it was mine, not theirs. I chose when to speak, and soon I would speak everything, in a room where they could not interrupt, where truth would echo louder than legacy, where the world would see them without the shine they hid behind. You do not dismantle an empire by screaming. You dismantle it by letting it speak until the truth rots its foundation. And they were speaking. Oh, they were speaking. And every word was a shovel digging their fall. There are moments in life when the world pauses, not because time stops, but because truth finally demands to be seen. The law office conference room was glass and steel modern and echoing with the soft hush of wealth that behaved itself. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, painting sharp angles across polished wood. The air was too still, too clean, like a stage before the curtain rises. Daniel sat beside me, his hand resting lightly on mine, not holding me down, but grounding me a steady weight of loyalty and love. On my other side, Evelyn organized her files with the precision of a surgeon preparing for a heart operation. Across the table sat my mother, posture curled in cold superiority pearls bright against her tailored coat. Bradley, jaw tensed high, knotted too tight like a noose disguised as professionalism. And Harper, stoic smugness barely cracking as his knee bounced beneath the table. They looked like royalty fallen just slightly out of frame, pretending their crowns had not slipped. They expected fear. They expected tears. They expected the same quiet girl who once folded herself into the background of family portraits so she would not be accused of overshadowing the golden sun. Instead, they found a woman who survived her own blood. Mother offered a practiced smile. "We are glad you are feeling better, darling." Daniel exhaled softly, and I felt the rumble of it through my bones. Evelyn lifted her eyes calmly. "Let us get to it." She clicked her laptop and a monitor on the wall lit up. The room shifted an almost imperceptible tightening like glass deciding whether to crack. First, Evelyn played the voicemail. Bradley's voice filled the room, distorted only by arrogance. "Do not force me to fix this the hard way." Bradley's face flushed red. That was taken out of context. "Context," Evelyn repeated dryly, "is fascinating. Let us add more." She tapped again. Another voicemail. "You owe us. After everything we did for you." Harper leaned forward, voice low. "This is petty. Emotional." Evelyn glanced at him like he was an insect interrupting a dissertation. Emotional coercion is still coercion. Next came the screenshots. Mother's texts laced with control masquerading as etiquette. "Do not be emotional. Legacy requires discipline. Withdraw now and reputation stays intact." Mother's lips thinning with each revealed line. Then the footage. The screen brightened, shifting into the wedding venue hallway, soft flowers and candlelight calm as any fairy tale. Then the door opening, bridesmaids gasping, Daniel bursting into frame, lifting me blood-staining white lace. The gasp in the room was audible. Even the air recoiled. The moment froze where my veil dragged, streaked with crimson. Mother did not blink, but her throat bobbed once. Bradley's voice cracked. It was a misunderstanding." Evelyn paused. The video turned to him. "Did the knife misunderstand your hand?" His jaw clenched. "That angle is misleading." Daniel leaned forward, voice low but lethal. "The only angle here is the one you stabbed into her ribs." Bradley's eyes flickered not with remorse, but with panic, trying to find an exit. Harper tried to smooth his voice into authority. "This family will not be humiliated by false narrative." I met his gaze, steady and surgical. "You stabbed my body." She stabbed my voice. "I am correcting both." Evelyn pressed play again. The clip shifted. A security guard's body cam footage. Mother's voice crisp and cold. "Stay quiet." Guests must not know. Silence wrapped the table like suffocation. Mother spoke finally, each word trembling under its own weight. I was protecting our family. I held her gaze without blinking. You were protecting your reputation. At the expense of my life. She opened her mouth again, but no sound came. Some truths are too heavy to speak around. Evelyn placed a document on the table. Witness statements. Bridesmaids saw blood before paramedics arrived. Venue staff overheard Mother's attempt to hide the attack. The attending surgeon's note confirming wound pattern consistent with deliberate force. Harper's face drained of color, his voice once smooth as bourbon cracked like cheap glass. You want to destroy us. I shook my head slowly. No, I want you to stop pretending you did not destroy yourselves. A knock. The door opened. Sheriff's deputies entered, uniforms, crisp authority undeniable. Bradley sprang up, panic flaring. What is this? Evelyn did not raise her voice. Arrest warrant. Felony assault with a deadly weapon. Attempted coercion. Witness tampering. Bradley backed away, voice pitching high, losing that well-groomed calm he always wore like armor. I did not mean to hurt her. It was a moment. A mistake. Daniel stood too, not aggressive but towering with a presence that said he would not let another ounce of violence stain my life. His voice was steel wrapped in quiet loyalty. You stabbed her. Then you tried to silence her. You are not sorry. You are surprised. That is different. Deputies cuffed Bradley. Cold metal clicked around his wrists. Not gently. The first real consequence he had ever tasted. Mother gasped, reaching for him instinctively like a queen losing her heir. But the deputies guided him toward the door without pause. Bradley looked at me, panic morphing to venom. You did this. I held his stare calm as winter frost. No, you did. You chose violence. I chose truth. He was pulled away, shouting something incoherent as the hall swallowed him. Silence returned thick as smoke. Mother trembled not with fear but outrage. How could you? We raised you to win. There it was, the Carter gospel. Winning mattered more than breathing. I sat taller, stitches tugging but spirit rising. You raised me to obey. I chose to live. Harper scoffed. You will regret this. I smiled, small and cutting. I stopped regretting the day I stopped belonging to you. Evelyn slid another document forward. IRS complaint. Anonymous financial audit flag. Patterns of suspicious trust structure. Mother froze as she realized the empire she clung to was now tilting beneath her heels. Power without morality eventually eats itself. Daniel spoke softly. Not cruel, just true. The world sees you now. What you are without the stage lights. Harper stood abruptly, chair scraping like a warning shot. This is not over. Evelyn raised an eyebrow. It is for you. As they stormed out, I took one steady breath. The kind of breath a woman takes when the world she escaped collapses behind her and she does not flinch at the rubble. My hand trembled slightly under the table, not from fear, but from release. Daniel slid his hand into mine thumb, brushing my scar gently. I am proud of you, he whispered. Evelyn gathered her files. That was not revenge. That was correction. I nodded, voice soft but certain. Revenge is what they expected. Truth is what they deserved. Outside, winter wind brushed across the stone steps as we exited. Reporters across the street murmured. Cameras blinked. But I did not hide. I did not shrink. I lifted my chin, feeling sunlight warm my skin. For the first time in my life, legacy was not a cage. It was a beginning, a story not inherited but claimed, a future not dictated by bloodline but built by choice. Behind me, the Carter Empire cracked. Ahead of me, a world wide open and honest. I walked down the steps slowly, breath-steady Daniel at my side. And I felt it freedom, not as rebellion, but as truth finally allowed to breathe. When the wind lifted my hair and the light hit my face, I whispered to myself, almost a prayer, almost a vow, I do not fear you anymore. Silence used to be their weapon. Now it was my victory, because silence broken is strength, and truth spoken is power. And as justice walked me out of that building, I did not look back once. People assume collapse happens loudly, screaming, shattered glass, headlines. But empires built on reputation do not fall like buildings. They rot like fruit. Quiet first, soft in the center. Then suddenly the skin bursts and everyone sees what was always beneath the polish. In the days after the legal meeting, my phone buzzed not with my mother's orders or Bradley's threats, but with notifications from reporters requesting comment from old classmates, sending stunned messages from strangers offering quiet solidarity, and from women who whispered versions of my story into my inbox because society only ever taught them to whisper. Daniel sat beside me every night reading messages aloud when my eyes blurred with exhaustion. He did not tell me to be strong. He simply sat with me while I was. That is a different kind of love. On the morning after Bradley's arrest, the Richmond Society column posted a single cryptic line. The Carter family reputation has entered a new era of scrutiny. It sounded polite, but underneath was the hum of scandal sharpening teeth. Wealthy circles do not need volume to destroy someone. They dismantle with raised eyebrows and silent phone calls that say everything loud mouths dare not. Mother tried to contain the implosion. She issued a statement through a PR firm insisting the incident was a private family misunderstanding, a phrase that felt like acid poured into an open wound. It fooled no one. The footage existed. The medical reports existed. My scar existed. And the world had already begun stitching its own narrative, one not controlled by her. Country club acquaintances avoided eye contact with her at luncheons, or worse, offered pity disguised as civility. That kind of pity is lethal to people who built kingdoms on perception. Meanwhile, Bradley sat in a county holding cell as attorneys scrambled his hair. Unkempt arrogance stripped down to raw fear. Lawyers negotiated bail, but with conditions: a no-contact order mandated psychiatric evaluation, travel restriction. For the first time in his life, doors did not open simply because he carried the Carter name. Privilege without power becomes pitiful fast. Harper tried to salvage business relationships, calling investors, insisting rumors were exaggerated. Investors do not like instability. They like clean money, clean reputations. When whispers surfaced about tax irregularities and unusual trust structures leaks, Evelyn predicted the stock in his private company ticked downward. His voice, once velvet and certain, now cracked in boardrooms. At night, he paced our old mansion lights, glowing like a ship sinking at sea. I did not need to watch. I felt it. The house where my childhood voice was trimmed and trained like a bonsai finally suffocated under the weight of its own perfection. I spent those days recovering slowly, moving gingerly rib-sore beneath bandages. Healing is not poetic, it is mundane routines, repeated with discipline. Gentle stretches, warm compresses, breathing deeply even when breath reminds you of knives. But each morning I stood a little taller. Each day my scar pulled less when I moved. Daniel kissed it reverently, once whispering, "This is where you stopped belonging to them." I believed him. Evelyn visited weekly, not always with files, sometimes just with quiet conversation and chamomile tea. She did not see me as a victim. She saw me as a strategist who finally had her battlefield. One afternoon, she smiled while flicking through her notes. "They are unraveling themselves. We do not need to push. We simply stand still and let gravity drag them down." I pictured Bradley's furious eyes as metal cuffs clicked around his wrists. Gravity had been waiting decades. The trial date was confirmed. I was ready. Press coverage surged. Old money scandal. Bride survives stabbing by brother society. Matriarch questioned in attempted cover-up. I did not give interviews. Truth did not need performance now. Silence had become my armor, but it was my silence chosen, not imposed. Meanwhile, the Brooks family filled our home with warmth. Daniel's mother cooked casseroles and fussed over me in ways that felt tender, not suffocating. His father sat with Daniel at the kitchen table, both sipping coffee while discussing protective measures and next steps. They did not treat me like fragile porcelain. They treated me like someone worth defending, worth believing in, worth standing beside, even when every headline reminded them this battle was fire, not ceremony. One evening, curled on the sofa with Daniel, I whispered a thought I had held tight inside me. What if people think I am tearing apart my family? Daniel kissed my temple. You did not tear anything. You peeled off wallpaper. The rot was already there. The words settled warm and steady. Truth is not destruction. Lies are. Weeks passed. Trial prep intensified. Depositions. Evidence logs. Witness interviews. I practiced breathing steadily when lawyers asked me to recount details. Trauma is not a straight line. It flares at random moments during a commercial in the quiet before sleep while folding laundry. But every time it rose, I faced it not like prey, but like a witness reclaiming power. Therapy sessions became part of routine. Sitting in a softly lit room, I learned that protecting yourself is not selfish. It is sacred. I learned that loyalty demanded without reciprocity is simply captivity. I learned that surviving family does not mean breaking family bonds, it means refusing to drown in them. Meanwhile, Mother attempted one last tactic. She showed up at our door in Pearl's wind, ruffling her perfect hair. Desperation hiding behind rigid posture. Daniel answered. She asked to speak to me. I walked to the doorway slowly, scar-tugging beneath sweater fabric. She looked at me, and for the first time in my life, I saw fear in her eyes. Not fear of losing me, but fear of losing face. Eleanor, she whispered, voice trembling just enough to sound human. We can still fix this. Withdraw the charges. Let us handle this privately. But her hands had no tremble. This was performance, not repentance. I leaned against the doorframe. Fixing would require accountability. Silence is not healing. It is burial. She swallowed. Families do not abandon each other in public. I breathed deeply, voice steady. You abandoned me on the floor bleeding, and the only thing you worried about was guests. She opened her mouth, but I held up a hand. You care more about embarrassment than you ever cared about me. You raised a son who thought consequences were beneath him. That is not my burden anymore. Her face crumpled for a breath, just one. Then she turned, walked away, steps unsteady, and I closed the door gently. Daniel pulled me into his arms. I did not cry. The tears belonged to the version of me that begged for love from statues. Now, I wanted only truth. The night before trial, we sat at the dining table, Daniel holding my hands, candlelight flickering against our joined palms. Whatever happens, he whispered, you already won, because you did not stay quiet. I nodded, feeling peace spread like dawn inside my chest. The courtroom was cold marble and solemn, yet somehow it felt safer than my childhood home ever did. Bradley sat across the aisle, suit immaculate, eyes hollow. The golden boy stripped of gold. Mother sat stiffly behind him, clutching gloves like they were a lifeline. Harper stared straight ahead, jaw clenched. When I took the stand, I did not shake. I spoke clearly about the trust, the coercion, the stabbing, the whispered command to protect the family reputation as blood soaked my dress. When the prosecutor played the footage, silence filled the courtroom like a held breath. Some spectators gasped, some shook their heads, and my mother closed her eyes like a woman praying not for forgiveness, but for erasure. When I finished, I felt lighter, not vindictive but whole. My truth existed outside my body now. It breathed in the world where I could not be silenced again. The verdict came swift guilty of felony assault coercion witness intimidation. Bradley was led away in cuffs again, trembling, shouting he did not deserve this. But entitlement always believes consequences are personal attacks, not justice. Mother wept not for me, but for reputation turned to dust. Outside, flashes sparked as reporters shouted questions. I did not speak. Daniel held my hand. Evelyn smiled slightly, a warrior's pride. Later, Daniel and I sat on the porch of our home, wrapped in blankets, winter air crisp around us. He rested his head against mine. I am so proud of you, he whispered. My thumb brushed my scar. I whispered back, I am proud of me too. Healing is not victory. Speaking is not enough. Justice is more than punishment. But knowing I walked out of that courtroom whole, unbroken, unowned, that was triumph. And as evening settled gentle and gold over Richmond, I realized something quietly immense. I did not rise to spite them. I rose because I deserved to stand. Their fall was not my triumph. My rise was, and I would carry that truth into every breath of the life they no longer controlled. 1 year later, the world feels quieter in a way that does not mean silence, it means peace. The kind earned drop by drop, scar by scar, truth by truth. Winter again. Richmond trees skeletal against a pale sky, but the cold no longer creeps into my bones with fear. It meets a woman rebuilt. I wake before dawn most mornings, not because anxiety jolts me awake like it once did, but because there is a calm ritual in breathing before the world stirs. I lace up my shoes, the fabric brushing the scar on my rib, a reminder not of pain, but of arrival, and I run through our neighborhood as street lamps fade into early sunrise. Each step feels like reclaiming territory inside myself. Beside me, sometimes Daniel runs too, matching my pace, but often he lets me go alone because he knows the difference between holding and caging. Our love is not a leash, it is wind behind my ribs. Our wedding vows, postponed 1 year, are tucked inside a silver frame on our fireplace, now not spoken beneath chandeliers and watchful eyes, but beneath oak trees with lanterns swaying in warm summer air, surrounded by people who love without conditions. My dress then was simple, soft, not a costume for legacy, but a celebration of choosing each other freely. When we kissed, there was no applause forced by etiquette, only cheers from real hearts. That moment did not erase the blood on the first gown. It rewrote the meaning of wearing white. In our living room, wedding flowers dried in a ceramic bowl hold the scent of lavender and sunlight, not power and control. I run my fingers across them sometimes and exhale gratitude. My career flourishes quietly yet steadily. I work in a research lab now where intelligence matters more than manners, where my voice fills rooms without trembling, where nobody calls ambition unfeminine or intelligence ungraceful. I lead a small team and they call me firm but compassionate. They do not know how monumental it feels each time someone looks at me expecting leadership, not silence. The scar beneath my blouse pulls sometimes when I stretch too far. Part of me is glad. Not because I enjoy pain, but because healing does not mean erasing what happened. It means carrying it without collapsing under the weight. There are days it stings sharp as memory. Those days I touch it gently and whisper, "You lived." The Carter estate stands still a monument to an era that cracked like porcelain dropped from too great a height. Mother no longer attends luncheons with her chin lifted high. Invitations stopped arriving. Charity boards quietly removed her name. Country club tables that once shifted to make room for her glance past her, now, with cool, detached courtesy politeness, sharpened into exile. She still sends letters sometimes. Handwritten, precise, never apologizing, always circling the truth like a moth refusing to land on flame. Statements like, "I hope you have found clarity," or "family ties matter more than outsiders understand." I read them once. Breathe slowly, then fold them away without anger. Fury was fuel once. Now, peace is. Bradley is serving his sentence. News articles mention therapy requirements, community service, behavior monitoring. A year ago, the thought of him paying consequences eased a wound in my chest. Now, I simply hope no one else is ever cut by the sharp edges of his entitlement again. I do not visit. Justice was never about witnessing suffering, it was about ending mine. Harper vanished into quiet business exile, where whispered scandals cling tighter than perfume. I do not think about him beyond the occasional passing thought. Power without empathy is just cruelty dressed in expensive suits. The Brooks family remains my anchor. Daniel's mother calls every Sunday to talk about her garden or ask whether I am eating enough greens. His father volunteers at a local youth center now because he says boys need to learn strength is not force but responsibility. They treat my scar with reverence, not shame. They treat my voice like truth, not threat. Once a month, I visit a survivor support group. Not because I am broken, but because rebuilding alongside others feels like lifting bricks together instead of alone. I stand sometimes in front of women whose voices tremble the way mine once did, and I share what I learned. Family does not mean obedience. Blood does not mean safety. Silence does not mean dignity. Love is earned, not owed. At the end, I always say one sentence the way others might recite gospel. They do not get to stab you and call it love. After small shifts and quiet breaths, I see recognition in their eyes, seeds planted in soil still shaking. That is enough. Healing is not loud, it is steady, and victory is not revenge, it is living without a leash. On warm evenings, Daniel and I walk by the river. He laces his fingers through mine, thumb brushing the inside of my wrist. We do not speak much. Peace does not always need sound. Sometimes a jogger passes, sometimes a dog barks, sometimes wind ripples the water. Life is ordinary in the most extraordinary way. Tonight, as the sun melts gold over the James River, I stand at the railing and breathe in autumn air, thick with wood smoke and promise. Daniel wraps his arms around me, his chin resting lightly on my shoulder. "How does it feel?" he whispers. I exhale, slow, steady, certain, like I came home to myself. He kisses my temple, and in the reflection on the river, I see a woman standing straight, unbroken, not waiting for permission to exist. A woman who chose herself and lived. A breeze lifts my hair, brushing against my scar, and instead of shivering, I feel warmth rise in my chest. Soft, certain, defiant in its peace. I whisper not to him, but to the girl I was, the daughter I survived, the woman I became. I was not ruined. I was reborn. And as twilight settles, I turn to the camera with a small, steady smile and speak to the people watching. If you ever survived the people who were supposed to love you, drop the words. I rose in the comments because you did, and because none of us rise alone. I choose me, and I always will.